All right, welcome everybody. We got Cole, Chris, and my father Mike, and today, episode 2. Dude.
Yes, we do.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good. How are you?
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
We're also really excited to have you on today. So,
Appreciate it.
Chris, get us
Thanks
started.
for the invite.
Yeah. So, kind of a little thing is, I wanted to do a podcast for years. I know Cole has too, and so we're really thankful we're starting this. And one of the people that I always wanted to have on was my father. I always thought it'd be kind of cool to, have him share his life, because I know it, but none of you guys do. And so, my dad's just one of those guys that he's always there for you, and he cares, and he just wants to see you succeed. And so, I greatly love my father. And yeah, Dad, how about you start off with a little bit of your childhood?
A little bit of my childhood. Well, so grew up local here, Skagit Valley. Family of 12 or 11 siblings. Had 6 sisters and 5 brothers. Grew up in the local logging industry. Graduated from Burlington High School. Grew up kind of out in the country. Didn't really move into the city until I think I was about 18 years old, about the time you were born. Had a dad that ran shake mills, had a grandfather that got him into the logging industry back in the 1940s, I believe, and sisters and brothers all kind of moved up, moved out. The brothers, we all worked for Dad, minimum wage. Sisters all got, better taken care of, I suppose. But it gave us a drive to be independent and successful in our own lives. Worked minimum wage for him until I was about 18 years old. When I say minimum wage, he paid us minimum wage and he gave us a couple dollars under the table, but
What a guy.
What a guy.
But when he passed away, as he was into the last few years of his life, he passed away from prostate cancer, so it was a long journey for the last years of his life. But he told us all, I'm not going to leave you $1, but I'll teach you how to work. And so we respected that. We appreciated it. He bought his grave in Cedar-Woolley. He bought the plot, and then he wanted to be cremated, so half his ashes could be spread up on Sauk Mountain, and the other half could be in the grave for those who didn't want to go hike up and visit him. So, but he didn't buy us a headstone. So I went around, found a guy that would do it for $1,200, and I went around to each one of the siblings and made them each pay $100, so we had to all contribute for that. So, but it was good. Learned how to work. Had you and your sister at a really young age. I think I was 17 when you were born, 18 when your sister was born, which kind of forced me to make a life choice and decide that I was going to contribute. And when you're young, you're kind of selfish. You don't like to give your money to anybody except for when it's fun.
Yep.
And I had to learn to buy diapers and baby food and pay rent and do all that stuff, and still was able to have fun. Just kind of forced me to decide where my priorities were.
Yeah.
And
do
stick
you
with
mind
jobs.
if I ask you a question about that?
Go ahead.
Dad, because I know that. So you were 17 when I was born.
Yep.
I was a high school baby, basically.
Yep.
And I know that you've talked about it, about how, for you specifically. Let me go back. There's a saying that you've told me that stuck with me, and it was, there's 3 things that change a man's life. First one is a near-death experience. Second one is the death of a parent,
Mm-hmm.
and the third one was the birth of a child.
Mm-hmm.
And you've talked a lot about how, me being born at 17 for you was a huge challenge for you, especially still being in high school,
Right.
and then also going into figuring out, how do I be a husband? How do I, become a father? How do I do all those things? Would you share a little bit about what that was like, and kind of like the big lessons that you've learned throughout your life on that?
Sure. So it's very important to understand, first off, my parents were divorced when I was 6. They were separated, so had a mother that raised 4 boys from her marriage. My father was married 3 times. First marriage, 6 children. Second marriage, 4 children. Third marriage, 2 children. And so I got to experience that, basically raising myself and my brothers and I kind of clanning together and helping raise the 4th child, your Uncle John. He was 5 years younger than me. So looking back on what that taught me to grow up without a father present in the home really kind of gave me
And that's because Grandpa was working all the time.
Grandpa remarried and was living in Oregon and then back in Washington. Yeah, but he was remarried, so he wasn't living with us. But yeah, taught me, the importance of having a father to influence your son, your daughter, and making sure that that was part of the priority in their life. So when I was married, my upbringing, my belief is you put the wife first, and then you put the children second, because if the wife and the husband are aligned, the children will have consistency and continuity. Some marriages, they put the children first, and then they lose their marriage, and then it becomes divorce, right? So you have to be in alignment with your wife first. So with that, basically decided that I was going to be a consistent father with my wife, and I was going to make sure that the children had the same message coming from both sides of the relationship. And it was hard because we were both young. She was a year younger than I was, and we really didn't have her parents were divorced also, so we really didn't have an example of what good looked like. We had to learn through that. Several years later, we wound up getting a divorce, unfortunately. Not knowing what that was going to lead to, being young children, married ourselves.
Yeah, because you guys got divorced when you guys were like 23, right? 22?
Yeah, it was 2002. So right
I was
about that,
7.
you were 7 years old.
Yeah.
So that was tough on the marriage, right? Having children, trying to work. I worked full time. By the time that we were divorced, we had 3 children together, right? So there's always that component. I don't blame anybody. I don't think she blames anybody. It was just not the right time in our lives to try to manage that. And, now that I'm remarried, that's awesome. Been married to my current wife, your mom, Amy, for 18 years, almost 18 and a half years. So we have a great relationship, but we're both smarter and older. But to circle back to your childhood, it was difficult because your mom and I didn't know what good looked like. We didn't have a foundation of what good looked like. We didn't have an example. We didn't have people to tell us this is what good looks like. Yeah. And that made it even that much more difficult. Yeah. Right. So our examples were already separated parents as well. But the biggest key was to maintain the consistency in the children's lives of what a good father and a good mother look like. And that was our sacrifice, was to teach you, to instill those principles and try to drive you in the direction. Success is not just money. Success is not just objects. Success is the example that your children achieve far beyond, the principles that you teach them. You can't make a child successful. You give them the tools in their toolbox of life. You give them a couple tools before you push them out the door, or they walk out the door in our case, and hope that they're going to make better choices. I don't know if you remember, on your 18th birthday, I signed your birthday card and said, I'm really proud of you for not asking me for money, but if you need wisdom, feel free to talk to me. Yep. So,
and I still call you to this day.
Yep. So, wisdom has more value than money. Yep. By all stretch of the game. Wisdom comes at a cost of time, money, or both, is what I always tell my children. So.
Holy cow!
Yeah. Well, there was something that you had mentioned about, you learning to become a leader, and I know that especially in your work and your life, that seems to have been a reoccurring thing. You know, especially to me, I feel like, you know, you're a leader. You know, what was that journey like becoming a leader? When did you, have you ever doubted yourself? Have you ever been to a point where you're like, is this even right? Am I doing this the right way? What do you do in those situations? And how do you become, how does somebody who's not a leader become a leader?
Good question. Leadership is it's not something you're born with. Truly not something you're born with. It's something that you make a decision and you strive to accomplish that decision. It's a sacrifice. It's like if you make a decision you walk past somebody that has dropped their books on the ground. You have a decision whether you're going to help pick them up or whether you're going to walk around them. I subscribe to the servant leadership design. So, you know, a couple things I learned on early in my career. First thing was from my father. He was a great man, leader. He was successful. He said, a leader doesn't tell people what to do, doesn't make command decisions. That's not what leadership is. Leadership is listening to your people and making a command decision when needed. So if you can't listen to your people, if you've got 30 people on your team and you're the only person walking down the street and nobody's behind you, are you really a leader? Or are you just a boss? So I truly believe there's a huge difference between a leader and a boss. A leader, I'll tell you what a boss is, because we see a lot of them in society. We see a lot of them in you know, young generation growing up thinking that they need a title to tell somebody what to do. They make things happen. They drive people in a particular focused direction, but they're looking for results. Leadership does not come with a title. Leadership is having a game plan and understanding what the focus is, what the goal is, and then informing everybody of what the goal is, explaining why we need to get there, and then letting them do it, and stepping out of the way, listening to what everybody has to say, and then everybody coming up with an informed decision. It creates the buy-in, it creates the ownership, which is important. If you got a team of people and they don't subscribe or they aren't bought into it, what's the value of it trying to accomplish it if everybody's just gonna be like, yeah, well, that was yours. And that's a big problem in a lot of businesses, is everybody thinks that their outcome is more important than everybody else's, right? So
Selfishness.
Selfishness, yeah. So servant leadership, you know, if you want to be a true leader, if you don't go home at night when somebody's family member passed away and they're feeling it, if you're somebody calls in and says my child's got, you know, going to be late for school because this or that, or I need to take my child to the doctor. If you don't feel that in your stomach, you really haven't figured out what leadership is, because your people are your greatest asset. You know, we were talking earlier off camera about what success is, right? In a business, success isn't how much money you can make. It's not how much product you can put out the door or how much turnover you can do in a fiscal year. It's the people that you work with that are going to contribute to the success of that business and the sustainability of that business. Markets fluctuate. We all know that. Markets go up, markets go down. Money goes up, money goes down. It's based off of so many inputs, whether it's political, whether it's regulatory, whether it's climate, whether it's market, whether it's interest. Look at social media can influence markets and create some of the largest breakouts. You know, and what are those Stanley Cups? Social media. There you go, right?
Yep.
Created a huge explosion.
Were
in
we
market.
talking about that?
Stanley Cup?
So I was talking to someone about the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I don't even know what
TikTok.
that is.
The Stanley water cups with the straws on the top, the screw top, the big tall ones. Go Google it. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
They went
It wasn't me.
viral. They went viral on TikTok.
Yeah, and it was a huge explosion for the company. But that's not success. Success is look at them in 10 years. Are they still going to be as viable? Are they still going to be as into the market as they were? Because they were almost faded out of the market completely, right? So my point is sustainability of a market. of a business, and with that comes people needing to find a different job. Firing somebody or letting somebody go is not the worst thing. Sometimes people need to go find a better fit for them so that your business can be more sustainable and they can be more sustainable. And as a leader, your job is to find those things that are important to those people and understand what's important to them before your job can be, before your business can be successful.
Yeah.
If you don't know the name of their spousal unit, if they have one, or the name of their children, if they have them, when you speak to them, that's probably one of the first things you should do, is find out what they are on a personal level and what's important to them. Ask them why they're there before you tell them what you need from them.
Yeah.
And that's leadership. Understanding the best fit for the people that are in your care as a manager or as a supervisor.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Did you learn some of these principles working in the logging business with your dad?
Absolutely, absolutely. He started out very young. He was 13 years old, I think, when his parents picked him up from they took him to it's during Depression, right? He was born in 34, so it's just coming out of the Depression. They took him to a Catholic church school, took him at 7 years old, let him take him for a tour of the place, and then he came out and his suitcase was sitting on the steps, and so he stayed there till he was 13. At 13, his dad picked him up and said, "You're going to get a log truck and you're going to start making money, start
He was a
contributing to the
self-employed
family."
19,
19.
19. Grandfather, imagine that. Imagine like 60 years ago, 19 years old, self-made millionaire.
Yeah. But what he did was he got hooked up with a guy that taught him how to buy equipment, sell equipment for shake mills, and he started resourcing stuff and up and down the West Coast. But the thing he did was he built teams of people around him that he knew and that were family, because he didn't have a family, but he knew he wanted a family. So his team was his family, and they go after work. They'd help each other out. He was one of the first guys, I think, back in the 1960s. He bought jet skis, and they go up to Baker Lake, and he'd have big parties. He had jet skis that you could just take from the mill after work with your family and go do jet skis. He had boats and stuff.
Where's it at right now?
Right? So, but he treated his people like family. He knew what they wanted. To this day, our name is, synonymous with people of that generation. They're like, "Oh, are you Walt's son? Or are you Gene's son?" Chris has been asked, does he know this person, that person? Yeah, my grandfather, that was my uncle, stuff like that. He treated people so well that they wanted to work for him. Guys were coming out of retirement to help him out. He paid guys in the 60s $18 an hour to sweep the floors. So people, he'd buy people a house so that they'd come move up and work with him from Oregon.
Wow.
So I mean, to him it was family.
Right.
So
Having this conversation I'm like seeing gaps,
Gaps in
in
your
my
own
life, my
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
What are you taking from it? What do you think that
Well, for the first time ever, I've had to support a business partner.
Maggie?
Yes,
Yep.
Maggie.
Yep.
And I'm like, she's like 40, but she's a business partner. Like, she's in the business, we're in this together. And I've never dealt with it. I kind of feel the pressure to support her, and sometimes I feel like I need to be in a position where I need to be better supporting her. Like, that's really where I've been feeling these last 14 days, because I'm pretty busy. And then she calls me, she's like, "I don't know how to manage this." And I'm like, I don't even know how to manage it, right? And having this conversation right now, me and Maggie are close, but I have a bunch of respect and love for her.
Right.
And I'm feeling like I'm not telling her that enough.
Yeah, or showing it in a way.
Or showing it enough in a
Yeah.
way.
I think one of the biggest disconnects in business or in friendship is asking questions. You don't ask somebody, you assume. Instead of asking them directly, what do you need? What can I do to help you be more successful? What is one thing that we can work together on that'll help both of us grow? If you don't have the answers, and I think this goes back to what Chris was getting to, is what are some of the ways that I've became more successful, or tools that I use, one of the things that I do when you just said, she doesn't know how to do it, you don't know how to do it, I've been put in that situation time after time after time. We were living in Hawaii. I work in oil and gas, right? So work in the refining industry. We transferred from here to Hawaii in '09, and I got offered to go to North Dakota to help mitigate some bargaining disagreements between the union and the company, kind of go out there and support some of the positions. I was sitting in a big meeting with all the head managers and vice president, and they just ratified all the issues. I was going to be flying out the next day, and they said, hey, where are we at on this pre-startup safety review? It's going to be like a month-long ordeal for all this project work. And one of the managers said, well, I had so-and-so do it, but he quit. Okay, well, who's working on it? We don't have anybody working on it. And I was with this another friend he lived in California, but he was one of those, don't ask questions, go figure it out kind of guy. You know, hey, if you don't know how to do it, go figure it out, plug around for a bit, find the people that know how to do it. And he and I worked really well together. And they said, hey, Greg, you know how to do it? And he goes, no, but Mike does. And I was like, all right. And
But you didn't know how to do it.
I'd never done it in my life. So, but I was afraid. I wasn't afraid. I was like, I'm gonna figure it out, because they don't put you in positions to make you fail. Leaders will put you in positions and then support you. And people that think that they're gonna fail don't understand what leadership, the responsibility of leadership, right? They're looking at it from their own lens. Instead of looking at it from this lens going, what do we need to do? They look at it from this lens and they say, I can't do it. But leaders are looking at it going, hey, I know he doesn't know how, but we're gonna support him and we're gonna make him successful. So I said, yeah, I can do it. And we walk out of there, and the vice president and the manager said, all right, you have all our support. And the VP said, he has my authority. Everybody here, whatever he needs, you make it possible for him. I walked out of there, and I think they all thought I was like their level of leadership, and I was like 4 levels down. So when I walked out of there, everybody knew me as being the guy in charge, and they told all their team, and so their team were at my beck and call, right? And so I said, Greg, I said, have you ever done one of these before? He goes, no. He goes, I got to go home to California this week, and he goes, you'll figure it out. And he just left me.
AI.
Yeah. Well, this is like Windows 7 was the thing. But I got up with the managers, and the one that was in charge of it, that had the individual that quit. I said, what's your expectation? And he goes, I want it to be the best one we've ever had, and I want it to be 5 signatures for each package. And there was 170 packages. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just getting people together for that many hours, right? Because that's their schedule conflicts as well. I said, okay, let's go.
It's also a really great question that you asked, though, is when you asked, what is your expectations?
Right.
You laid it out really quickly and found out what they wanted. I think that's really awesome.
That's very key to being in alignment, right? A lot of people think they know what they want, but until you talk to people that know what they need or what they're looking for, you could be doing a completely different thing and come out with a beautiful outcome, and they're still sitting over here going, well, wait, what about me? Right? So it's important to understand what your customer needs, what they expect, and you figure out how to get there, right? So they're not sitting back going, well, wait, this isn't what I wanted.
Right.
So I got in with all the manager, direct reports, and I called a meeting and I said, this is what we need to achieve. How do we get there? And it was surprising. Historically, they had one person doing all this. Next thing you know, they're like, hey, I can do this. I got this. I'll get this. No problem. I got my assistant. I'll do this. And I basically was out of there in 2 weeks. And we provided exactly what they needed. It was the best exercise they'd ever gone through on recommissioning new equipment. Everybody was happy. We had validation and signatures. And I took over a whole floor of an office area that they usually had reserved for all these big project work. They just cleared it out and said, Mike's got this, right? And so, but I met a lot of people. Everybody came together, and the whole point is I didn't do it all. I did a small portion of it. I just started getting the right people involved. And that's the tool I use when I don't have the answer, is I get the right people involved. I go ask somebody that's, you know, a lot of time I'm like, okay, I don't know how to do this. Do you know? And they usually it's like, no, but I think so-and-so does. Okay, cool. And I'll go to that person. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't help you. It's like, I always tell people I'm not accepting apologies today. But I'm like, you did give me a direction that I needed to go, right? So somebody's got the answer. And if nobody has the answer, I just start picking up the phone, calling somebody. Sometimes I call the state, sometimes I'll call the governor's office, or I'll call the Coast Guard for regulatory stuff that I'm trying to figure out. And everybody's like, oh, you can't call them. I'm like, they're just a person. They're just as confused about stuff as I am.
Yep.
So let's call them and figure it out, right?
Absolutely.
I don't waste time with assumptions. Assuming stuff is so time consuming and wasteful sometimes. It's like, why not just go right to the source and ask them, what are you actually trying to achieve by making that comment?
Right.
You know, so.
I believe in this principle. Tell me if you do too, okay?
Okay.
This shoot, aim, fire, or get the plane in the air and fix it while it's in the air kind of mentality. Do you believe in that? Kind of
Yes.
thing? Yes.
You know, I'm not going to quote anybody, but I know it's better to make a decision and start making moves and then correct on the fly versus sitting back and pre-planning. The logistical part, the planning portion is about 75% of the success of any mission. However, if you got everybody sitting there waiting, those are resources, those are dollars going out the window, those are hours people are burning off of their daily clock to be able to do something. You got to be able to get people actually working on something, and they're going to be collecting data. So when you say, hey, this is our end goal, they've already got a storyline, they've already got some traction on stuff, they already know somebody that they need to call, right? They need to make these decisions. In my career, I'm not going to go and explain everything, but I started out in production side, and then I went into supervising production side, and then I went into corporate business development, what good looks like, creating business alignment and synergies across the organization. We had 10 refineries at the time, Mid-Con, West Coast, and then we were bought up in 2018 by Marathon, which is a largest independent refiner in the U.S. So now we got 15 refineries from the East Coast to the West Coast, right, and Alaska. And my role went away. I walked over into another department. They said, hey, we got a fire chief spot open. You want to apply for it? Well, I just happen to have 24 years of firefighting experience and leadership, and so I walked into that role. And one of the first things that I did was realign how we approached any incident. Was, instead of planning everything, it was like, let's get some strike teams out there, figure out what we need, get some 360 perspective, get that stuff reported back, and then we're going to make a command decision, right? Instead of sitting there talking about it, trying to pull all the paperwork out. There's a lot of feet walking around, standing around, and we are on a time clock. People can only operate so many hours in a day legally, so you got to start consuming some of that time while you're over there looking for
legal
those
issues there too.
Yeah, so, and that was, a few years ago. Then I got into the security, and now I'm in the safety and training side. So it's been a lot of different perspectives, right? And that's important, because if you don't have a different perspective, you're never going to understand the other side of the fence and how that affects everybody else. Just recently, one of my safety professionals, I challenged him to go find a training that had nothing to do with safety. They came back and said, there's this really cool course that I think we really need to focus on that's going to improve our safety here. I said, I see that. It's in Iowa or something. I said, I get it. That's great. However, What does that have to do with not being a part of safety? Go find something else. I said, we'll send somebody else to that. And she goes, I get it. She's going to go find something on something totally different. I told her it could be leadership, it could be basket weaving, I don't care. It could be environmental focused. Yeah, it could be regulatory compliance, something. Right?
All of a sudden you got people selling.
Safely sewing.
Yeah, safely sorry.
But your customer is not always just safety, right? Your customer is somebody else, something different. So I've been blessed. I've challenged myself to go learn things that I had no value of applying to my current role. But it served me very well. It's given me perspectives on leadership. It's given me perspectives on how it affects other people's business, right? And so when you do that, you build your bigger team. Everybody becomes part of your family.
Question.
Yes.
When you talk about business alignment, could you like boil it down to like a basic sentence or bullet points on what's important about business alignment and how I can implement it in my business today?
I mean, I've got a lot of little catchphrases I use. I'm trying to think. Business alignment. I guess a big one is if not everybody's marching in the same direction towards a common goal, you're going to have repeat. You're going to have time waste. You're going to have resource waste. You're going to have people.
How would you get people though to align that way?
Well,
you know, like what's I think that's kind of what his question is. How do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to start with why. There's a book. What's his name? Simon Sinek. Start with why.
Start with why.
Yeah.
Yep.
If people don't understand the why, and I was just trying to explain this here this week in the middle of a big audit, trying to explain to leaders, if you don't start with why, people don't have the buy-in, the value, right? Recently just finished up another really good book called All In. How do you get hyper-effective teams to work together for a common goal and create the all-in buy-in, the ownership, so people have a value, vested interest in it. You talked about your business partner. Some businesses, they require you to put money in, so you have a vested interest. So your ownership is based on, or your success is based off the outcome of that partial ownership, right? You're not going to call in sick and say, hey, can't make it today, but pick up for me, and then I want my percentage, right? Yeah. So if people understand the why and what the outcome should look like, they're never going to give 110%. And they may, and one of the biggest things about leadership is once everybody understands the why, you need to listen to each and every opinion or viewpoint, and then you need to step out of the way and let them do the role, because it offloads your priorities. It allows you to focus on the big picture. So instead of being at the ground level, frontline leadership's about the 8,000 foot view. The leader should be at about a 30,000 foot view, looking out in front and see what they're going to run into. Do we need to shift left? Do we need to shift right? But they've got a view of the whole battlefield, so to speak.
I think of the what's the huge black Navy jet that they used to have?
SR-71?
The SR-71.
Yeah.
That's
He
us.
used to be in the Navy. by the
Oh,
way.
yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. That means a lot to me, Mike.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, we got off track. What was our?
I did wanna-
SR-71 visibility.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just thinking that at the 30,000 foot view.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking about. So yeah.
Yeah. It's important so people have, the worst thing I feel like you can do is you can push people in a direction, and then they get to a obstacle or a wall and they just stop because they don't know what direction to go. Should I go left? Should I go right? Well, there's a river on the right and the left. Little do they know the one on the right's only a foot deep, the one on the left's 10 feet deep. So you need to be able to look ahead and say, okay, when we get to this point, we're going to go right, get our feet wet, but we're going to go right back on trail, and we're going to look forward and get going. So understanding the needs of the business, understanding the needs of your business partner, understanding the needs of your people, being able to put all that together you have to remove yourself sometimes from the decision making. I always tell people, if you want a manager, any manager, if you come at a manager and you say, I have a problem, this is important. Anytime when you got a problem and you come to a manager and you say, hey, I got a problem, we need to fix this. The toilet's out of water, the paper's off the reel, they're gonna say, do this. Because they're fielding so many, priorities, so many little hiccups. All they're gonna do is give you a quick answer and go. They don't have time to sit and talk about it. So as an individual on the team, as a contributor, if you see a change, you see the value in a change, you see something that you want to, a direction you want to go to pick up, opportunities, take the time, invest your time, and come out with what good looks like. If I push one button and there's success, what does that look like? I ask that question to people often because I don't know what good looks like. For them, I know what good looks like for me, but if you want, you want to affect change, and again, a leader doesn't come with a title, right? It can be the lowest person, an unintended leader. But I tell them, come to a manager with a solution to a problem, and then calibrate. Will this work? Don't say, can I do this? You say,
Don't come with a problem, come with a solution.
come with a solution to the problem that you're trying to get them to buy into and give you either the time, the funding, the resources, the backing, the support, whatever it is. But, instead of saying, can I do this? I never ask questions. I don't ask questions. Questions are for people that aren't comfortable enough making a decision, right? I'm comfortable making decisions. I know what I want, so I'm not going to ask, can I do this? I say, this is where we need to go. Here's what it's going to take to get there. Here's why we need to go there. This is either regulatory compliance or this is going to, we're going to show our employees that we care more about them. We're going to invest time and it's going to cost this much. What do you think? That's the only question I ask. What do you think? Because I want their opinion, I want their feedback. And then they're going to say, well, did you consider this? I think I've been told no a handful of times in my career because I don't come with, can I? I talk to people often, they say, I can't do anything. Leadership won't let me do it. Well, your leadership. You just got to pull your head out of the wrong hole, put it on your shoulders, and figure out how to communicate. 80% of success is your ability to communicate with people. 20% is your knowledge, right? So if you can't effectively communicate and you can't earn the buy-in and the trust and understand what their needs are, success is going to be very limited for you.
And I would even say only 20% of that is the actual speaking part.
Sure.
I'm a huge believer in listen twice
Listening.
as much.
Yeah.
I try to talk only about 20 to 30% of the time.
Yeah.
So,
Where are we
and
at?
we're about 40 minutes, and I'm not quite sure how you want to wrap it up.
Do you feel, is there anything that you specifically want to talk about that you're feeling from this conversation that you remember you want to talk about?
Yeah, if you guys want to take about 2 hours and we can talk about, no, I'm just joking.
We're only
No,
halfway done.
No, I think it's important, and I really do appreciate you both taking the time to, allow me to sit down here and talk with you guys and ask some questions. Generational leadership is huge. People that don't know how to communicate with different generations of people that can't take the time and understand what's important to different generations. I was raised very narrow-minded in my beliefs. Since I walked away from my comfort zone, we moved to Hawaii, moved to Alaska. I've been working with a multinational corporation for a lot of years. It taught me a lot about the diversities, the equities, inclusion, stuff like that. And I didn't always prescribe to that when I was younger, but the generational learning and generational communication is super important if you're going to have success, because you're going to deal with it no matter what, no matter where, whether it's in your personal life, in your business life, in your communication with friends, stuff like that. But getting to understand, like I said, seek to understand, right? Seek to understand, and then open your mouth. Listen to people. I find that I'm a much more quiet person these days, because I used to say a lot that I didn't understand. And people, you know, I got nicknames, I got people remembering me. Coming back after moving away in 2009, ran into a guy yesterday, and he's like, man, and he referenced something that was from 2006 that we were working on something that had to do with a nickname that I had, and the plant manager now that I'm working with, him and I are friends, and he's like, wait a second, you know this guy? He goes, yeah, I've known him since 2002 when I hired on here, you know. But he remembered me as kind of a jokester at the time, and now I'm this leader that's coming in and affecting change. But he's like, yeah, you were such a nice guy. You were just kind of a young kid back then. And I was 26 years old back then, you know. So understanding you're gonna change, people will change. Don't be afraid of the change. Be wise to the change. Learn from your mistakes. Mistakes are important. Failure is extremely important, but to do it correctly. Fail quick, fail forward, fail often, but fail forward. Failure is your wisdom, you know, has way more value than the dollar. It's going to affect your ability to be successful and those around you on your team, because you can speak from the heart. You don't speak from a book. You don't speak from a statistic.
Thanks so much for being on our podcast.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
Yeah, as a closing statement, I kind of want to close it out is thank you again, Dad, for coming on this episode.
Yeah.
I'm really thankful. It's been a dream of mine to do this with you, and it's happened. So, you know, dreams do come true, right? And I do want to say, I want to compliment Cole too a little bit, as well as that, you know, Cole is very amazing. The fact that he does put himself out there and he tries, you know, and when he was asking you about, do you believe in, you know, building a plane while you're flying? Like, Cole really does do that, and I respect him for that. And so I'm glad I'm doing this podcast with you as well, man.
Thank you.
And yeah, I look forward to many years of us going to like the Bahamas and drinking Mai Tais.
Remember that podcast?
Yeah, remember that podcast?
Yeah.
Next time I'll be out there doing it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Yeah.
Cut it out.
let's cut it out. Cut.